the keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about the 49ers versus Cardinals offensive key matchups. And this is going to play a big portion in how the 49ers go about winning and being able to put up points on a pretty good Cardinals defense. A defense that's been very good against the run. Of course, if you watched my Tail of the Tape video or listened to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen, then you know that the Arizona Cardinals have been very good against the run through 2 weeks, both against the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. They really slowed down those running games and made that team one-dimensional. The New Orleans Saints had to throw the ball 46 times. So that just illustrates how good the Cardinals defense has been against the run. But there's lots of matchups in games that will end up dictating how an offense does or how a defense does. And if you can win those matchups, you have a really good shot of staying on the field and being able to convert on third down and eventually get into the red zone. So even though this is a game that has a lot to it, a lot of nuance, a lot of, formation changes and motions and shifts, all of it really is to get the matchup that you're looking for. I want this play versus that coverage, or I want this player against that player. A perfect example is I've done all my video breakdowns that are available over on Patreon. And there's a second half portion that I went over a Christian McCaffrey big third down conversion. The 49ers need plus 10. They need double sticks. They got to get a big play. They motion Christian McCaffrey out and stack him behind Ricky Pearsall. As they run the route, Ricky Pearsall is going to take Kool-Aid McKinstry to the inside, and he's going to engage the safety as well, allowing Kyle Shanahan to get a one-on-one look between Christian McCaffrey and Saints linebacker Pete Werner. This is exactly what the 49ers did. McCaffrey is a tremendous route runner. Kyle Shanahan said the best running back route runner he's ever seen. He did a really good job. He pressed it upfield. He got Werner to open his hips and turn to run, and then he broke off his route 2 yards beyond the stick, worked back to the football, first down 49ers. But it was the way that the 49ers went about it, the motion to get McCaffrey out there, the route that they had Pearsall run to be able to get that one-on-one look for Christian McCaffrey versus the linebacker. It's about matchups. And that's what's a lot of fun about football. Yeah, there's 22 guys on the field, but only one or two of those guys, in a route can really matter. Now, of course, everyone's got to do their part, but getting that one matchup that works in your favor is huge. And for the defense, they're trying to do the same thing. And teams this year have been squeezing the 49ers in the middle of the field again. We used to call this muddying up the middle. It was very successful against Jimmy Garoppolo, and we've seen it a lot when it comes to those deep crossing patterns. Linebackers are taking a little bit deeper drops. They're making the 49ers be willing to check it down underneath or run the ball. They're like, hey, can you be successful enough running the football that we don't have to sit back? We have to come up and make plays. So far, the 49ers running game has been hit and miss. Some of it because of blocking, offensive line, sometimes tight end, sometimes. And then sometimes running backs are just missing the reads, missing the holes. It's happened to everyone. Even Christian McCaffrey's had a couple of those plays. So it has just not been completely together. Right? The running game is still working things out. They're still getting it together. When they do, they can still be highly successful. This run game can still be very effective. But it's been fun to watch how defenses are attacking Kyle Shanahan and how he goes about attacking them. Just like one little thing that he did during that game down the stretch, he went to a lot of 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers with Kendrick Bourne, Jawan Jennings, and Ricky Pearsall on the field. And he spread out that Saints defense a little bit and tried to create some running lanes in the run game, but also some opportunities in the passing game against Brandon Staley's zone coverage. So it is a lot of fun. And this week it's going to be completely different because the 49ers are going against a Jonathan Gannon defense that is very talented, has a lot of skilled players that can make plays, but Jonathan Gannon is very creative, especially with blitz packages. The 49ers have certain things they're going to have to do in certain matchups, and he's completely continued to mold this team into the type of team that he wants that can finish on third down. We talk about it with the 49ers and their NASCAR defense. Well, the Arizona Cardinals are able to finish on third down a lot of times too. One of the better third down defenses. 49ers give up first downs on third down 33% of the time. Very good. Arizona Cardinals, 34%. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. 49ers players and offensive players against the Arizona Cardinals defense. The key matchups, kind of get a feel for how Jonathan Gannon's going to play this and how the 49ers are going to look to attack. That is what we're going to talk about. It's going to set us up for this week, for the game preview show eventually, but lots of cool stuff coming out as we talk this thing through. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Of course, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. They are the title sponsor of 49ers Cutback. So let's get into this. The first one I want to start out with is Christian McCaffrey. I brought up what he did in that game against New Orleans on that specific play where he makes the catch on Warner for a big first down. It was extremely pivotal. That's not the only play the 49ers found a matchup they liked. They also were able to find Christian McCaffrey in the end zone for a touchdown. There's not a lot of running backs in this league that are as effective in the run game as they are in the passing game. Christian McCaffrey changed the way running backs were drafted after 2022 and 2023 season. You started seeing guys like Jahmyr Gibbs go in round one because of his ability to not just run the ball, but catch the ball. A guy like Bijan Robinson was highly touted, and this has became a normal thing now in the NFL to draft running backs maybe a little bit higher in some seasons if they're dual threat. And it's becoming more prominent for these running backs to be effective in the passing game. But there's no one that's really as effective in the passing game as a running back as Christian McCaffrey. He's got legit slot receiver skills. And so it presents some obstacles for opposing defenses. And it's not just what happens when Kyle Shanahan gets him into a matchup that he loves, but it's also the fact that there's a lot of plays Christian McCaffrey is not designed to get the ball. He is just a check down receiver. And he gets the ball in his hands and he turns what should be a 4 or 5 yard gain into a 7. Or in week 1, he gets hit and vaulted forward for plus 15. Those are the types of things that set him apart. The plays he's not even meant to get a touch, he gets a touch to make something happen out of it. But I talked about this a little bit on the Red and Bold show. Christian McCaffrey's effect is also felt when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. The way that defenses react to him. Sometimes some of these patterns that are going over the middle of the field where the 49ers are having these deep crossers are working because those defenders, those linebackers who are taking extremely deep drops right now against the 49ers are having to kind of work up a little bit to McCaffrey. Now, it would be a lot better with George Kittle because they'd have to work up towards him at times too, but that's not the case right now. So it's on McCaffrey to do that, and he's been very effective. So what do we got this week is Christian McCaffrey working against the linebackers, Mack Wilson Sr. and Akeem Davis-Gaither of the Arizona Cardinals. Very talented group, very fast. In Akeem Davis-Gaither's department, he's really long and athletic. You look at Mack Wilson, he flies around, he makes plays, he blitzes, he's very aggressive. So the Arizona Cardinals like to run a 5-man front. They run a 3-4 base defense, and most of the time it's 5-man front. Very similar to what the 49ers have been going against this season during their first 2 games. So this is not going to throw them off when it comes to front, when it comes to alignment. It's going to be similar. Personnel, it's extremely different week to week, right? The first week against Seattle, you were going against some really big, athletic, fast defensive linemen, then with some speed rush on the outside, hyper-athletic linebackers. In week 2, it was different. Most of the speed came from the outside, and really, it came from Carl Granderson, who was a fantastic edge rusher, and the rest of the guys, Cam Jordan and the rest of the interior guys are more big physical veterans who understand how to get push. So it's a different set of skilled players, and athletically, the linebackers weren't as athletic as the first week against Seattle. This week, you're getting a mixture of both. Hyper-athletic linebackers who are also long, kind of that new age linebacker with Akeem Davis-Gaither, right? The long guy that can run, the Fred Warner mold. But you're also getting guys up front that are not just hyper-athletic, but are very talented. So you've got to find opportunities in the run game for Christian McCaffrey. But what you also have to find is opportunities for Christian McCaffrey to get matchups against Mac Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither. And you can do that. All you have to do is look at the film, and the very first play of the game on offense for Carolina, they got a look that got their running back one-on-one with Davis-Gaither in space. And what did they do? They picked up 9 yards on the play. So you can find these matchups, and it's going to be a little bit more complicated because one of the game plans for Arizona is going to be to limit the effectiveness of Christian McCaffrey. He's going to draw a lot of attention. And so we know that finding ways to get McCaffrey the ball is going to be difficult for Kyle Shanahan to do. But the way that he uses motions and formations and shifts, he's going to be able to get some of those one-on-one looks. And it still is advantage 49ers. And we're probably going to say this every single week that Christian McCaffrey's playing for the 49ers. It is advantage 49ers when you get McCaffrey against one of these linebackers. And it's going to be getting him in space where he can run his choice routes, where he can run these routes against them. They're not as fluid in their back pedals. They're not as fluid in being able to roll over or to open up and run with a fast running back. And then he has the ability to break it off and create separation in and out of his break and make plays. So this is going to be one of the key matchups. Kyle Shanahan getting Christian McCaffrey the ball in space against the linebackers, Mac Wilson Sr. and Akeem Davis-Gaither. And Jonathan Gannon is going to try to limit that the most that he possibly can. I'm sure sometimes he's going to try to find a way, to get Budda Baker potentially on Christian McCaffrey. I think that could be, very effective using Budda Baker at times, maybe Jalen Thompson when he's around the box, or even one of their corners in a nickel type situation. So maybe you get a nickel corner that locks on him. That is something the New Orleans Saints did last week with Alontae Taylor. So could they do that this week, with a Denzel Burke or even, another player? I think Budda Baker would probably make the most sense with Jonathan Gannon's, defense. It could be, Budda Baker or Jalen Thompson kind of doing that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they battle against Christian McCaffrey. But I think McCaffrey versus Mac Wilson Sr. and Akeem Davis-Gaither is going to be so much fun to watch. Now, another one that I'm really putting a look at this week, it's got to be 49ers wide receivers versus the Cardinals corners. And the reason is the Cardinals corners are dealing with so many injuries. And of course, they had the injuries, before the season started. They lost, guys, Sean Murphy Bunting, Starling Thomas. Those were big losses for the Cardinals. And then it felt like they kind of found guys to fill those roles, right? Max Melton. Melton is practicing, so that's good news for the Cardinals. It looks like he's going to be available. Will Johnson, however, is not practicing this week. So his availability for the game versus the 49ers is up in the air, and he had some really good plays against the Saints a couple weeks ago. Rashid Shaheed in the end zone, and he's right on top of him. He's got the speed and athleticism to be able to play with these guys. So the question marks about that. So if you don't have Will Johnson, what does this defensive back room look like for the Arizona Cardinals? Well, first off, you got Cutback Clark. The likelihood is he would start. And then it could be the young rookie out of Ohio State, Denzel Burke, who is a 5th-round pick. And Denzel Burke is very talented, a really good zone corner. But those guys are definitely not Will Johnson. Those guys are definitely not Max Melton. Now, I do think Max Melton is going to play in this game, and I'll be curious to see if the Cardinals elect to go with 3 safety look and bring in, Taylor Demerson and Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker together, or if they go with Max Melton and Cutback Clark, who I expect to start next to Max Melton, and then go with Denzel Burke when they go to 49ers go to 11 personnel. So it might be advantageous for the 49ers in this game, and it's not a normal game plan, but with Kyle Juszczyk's, chances of playing this game up in the air, we'll know more as this week progresses. And, even though you hear things moving in a positive direction, you just never know. It might be advantageous for the 49ers to run more 11 personnel than they normally run. To get 3 wide receivers out there on the field going against potentially a 3 safety look, or even getting an extra backup cornerback on the field where you can find some matchups you like. And I get it. You're going to see a lot of zone coverage, so you're not going to get a ton of one-on-one looks. But if you get Arizona in a cover 3, if you're running anything vertical, it is a one-on-one route. So I think that there's opportunities for the 49ers to run a 3-receiver set with Juwan Jennings, and I know that Juwan's working through some things, with Ricky Pearsall and with Kendrick Bourne. And you do have MVS, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of MVS hate. I don't share those opinions. I think that he's still figuring out this offense, and I think there were some couple opportunities for him down the field in week 1 and week 2 that weren't taken advantage of. But I think that those guys up top have the ability to really provide some mismatches against this Cardinals secondary. So secondary, as far as safety, is really good for Arizona. But the cornerback room, I think that's where the 49ers can really get some things done and be effective when it comes to offense. I love the matchup of Bourne, Juwan Jennings, and Pearsall versus Melton and Contrell Clark and Denzel Burke, or even one of those safeties, like Jalen Thompson or, Taylor Demerson. I just think that the 49ers have an opportunity there. Now, if it goes for the Cardinals that Will Johnson plays, and Will Johnson and Max Melton, I still like the 49ers' chances, but Juwan Jennings needs to go physical with Will Johnson. Will Johnson is a good cover guy, but he needs to get physical with them, and I think that's where they'll struggle a little bit when it comes to run support, and we're going to talk about the run game a little bit more in just a second. Now, if you are planning on betting in this week's matchup, bet with FanDuel. FanDuel has a lot of good opportunities in player props and quick bets, and you can bet, on touchdowns. You can bet on parlays, lots of cool stuff. Right now, the 49ers are favored by 2.5 points. That line has moved a little bit. The over-under has moved as well. It is now at 44.5. And so there's an opportunity there if you want to bet, on the total score. So if you're going to bet, check out FanDuel. It's all available. Lots of cool stuff. More parlays, popular parlays as the week goes on with FanDuel. Now let's talk about the 49ers offensive line versus pressure packages. And the reason I want to talk about that, if you watch, especially through the first 2 weeks, and I watched both games for the Arizona Cardinals against the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. I wanted to get a really good feel for Gannon. Is one thing that Jonathan Gannon's doing right now, and he's got a lot of talent to be able to do it, is bring pressure packages. So he simulates pressure before the snap, shows a lot of guys, in the A-gaps, shows a lot of guys around the line of scrimmage, and then you just don't know who's going to come. He also will run some line stunts. You look at the first pressure package he ran against Carolina this week, and it resulted in a sack for Josh Sweat. Sweat was lined up at defensive end. They were showing pressure, and they ended up running him on a loop on the stunt. And he got directly to the quarterback, and it was a strip sack, ball out. Zaven Collins ends up with it for the touchdown. So how do you effectively slow down Jonathan Gannon's pressure packages? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to be effective on first and second down. The Carolina Panthers faced too many third and longs. So you look back at the New Orleans game, they faced too many third and longs. Your effectiveness on first and second down are going to affect how good you are on third down. And so this is going to be one of the ways you can neutralize that pressure package, because if you can be in 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2, then you have the ability to run the football. Kind of all things are open. But it also provides that if you're going to bring pressure, you're going to leave somebody open, and I don't have to hold on to the football. I can get rid of it really quickly. Spencer Rattler was good in week 1 doing that. It would be like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. He would bring pressure, and Spencer Rattler would get rid of the football to Juwan Johnson. Boom, Brandon Cooks, boom, catch, get the first down. That's exactly what 49ers could do. Is if you're in the 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and he wants to bring pressure, you can get rid of the ball quickly where the pressure was coming from, and you always throw where the blitz is coming from. So if it's coming from the middle, just right over the middle of the field, boom, first down. That will allow other guys to be effective. Jake Tunges, Luke Farrell, they can make those short catches and convert, right? Kendrick Bourne, Juwan Jennings, that's how they make their hay. So this is literally one of those things where first and second down effectiveness is going to be very important. Now, if you do get to third down, one of the key factors with how you're going to be able to slow down his pressure package is Kyle Shanahan's going to have to give a little bit of help. So we know that he will a lot of times leave a running back in, and they can eventually release if everyone's picked up. but he's probably going to have to add a tight end as well. I think that one of the tight ends is going to have to stay in and help on third downs, with the Cardinals willing to bring at least 5 on every opportunity. You don't want 5-on-5s, because when they start running their twists and their stunts up front and they've simulated pressure and you don't know exactly where the pressure is coming from, it could be a little bit troublesome, especially for a guy on the inside like Connor Kobe. And I really like Connor Kobe, and I thought that he had a good game. But I think if you watch the film, the one thing you come away thinking is Connor Kobe needs to get a little bit better at picking up line stunts and feeling it and being able to pass guys off. And I thought that that was a little bit of a problem for him. I thought the 49ers missed a long shot down the field, which could have been a huge touchdown or at least a big explosive, because Granderson was able to work inside. Connor Kobe committed too much and wasn't able to come back and pick him up when he twisted inside. So there are some things that definitely this 49ers offensive line is pretty good at. I feel like the right side of the offensive line has played together for so long that they have a real chemistry and a synergy between Dominic Pooney and Colt McKivitz when it comes to passing off and picking up blockers. I think the left side, you don't have that as much, right? Banks and Trent Williams had that, but it hasn't quite been there with Ben Barge, and now it's Connor Kobe, the young guy. So that's going to be something to watch. I expect Arizona to target Connor Kobe and try to get him on some of those things. Use some of those guys on the inside to kind of knock him around and create opportunities for some of those guys they have on the edge. I talked about Josh Sweat, and he's going to be one of those guys that could definitely bring pressure off the edge. They also have Baron Browning. They will bring him from anywhere. And they have Zaven Collins, who is now an edge defender right over the last couple of years. So they bring all those guys in and allow those guys to create both off the edge and with some of the line stunts on the inside. Then they have the guys inside like Darius Robinson, Dalvin Tomlinson, and then the ageless one, Calais Campbell, who said game last week against the Carolina Panthers. So they have enough interior pressure and strength and enough speed and athleticism on the outside to really create some problems. And then I talked about the speed of the linebackers. They blitz those guys too. So they'll bring those linebackers and they'll drop out in those, fire zone blitzes. So there's a lot of things that they can do. So 49ers need to stay ahead of the sticks. And one way they're going to do it is by being good on the edge in run blocking. And I say on the edge because if you look at the Arizona Cardinals defense and they're running a 50 front, I've been saying this for 2 weeks now, you can attack the edge. And there's a lot of times the Arizona Cardinals edge out those outside guys even further than a wide 9. I mean, they get really out there. They might as well be a wide 10. I mean, that's honestly, they get out there a long ways. That creates bubbles to be able to run the football. But you can only run the football and be effective in that category if you do a couple of things. And one of it is your tight ends, Luke Farrell and Jake Tunges, have to be effective in helping get a push and kick those guys out and create that running lane for the 49ers running backs. They can't afford to lose to guys like Browning and to lose to guys like Josh Sweat and Zaven Collins. They have to win those, and then it'll really open up this running game because it creates some opportunities where you can get your offensive guard or offensive tackle to those linebackers and then still have that kick out and be able to kind of get up the field and create some lanes in the run game. There were opportunities for the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers to run the ball. The Saints were a little bit more effective than Carolina. Carolina's run game, it's not good the way that they scheme it or design it. It's not like the 49ers running game. So even though the Cardinals have been so good against New Orleans and Carolina and only allowing 78 yards per game on the ground, I think that there's an opportunity for the 49ers to run, but it's going to hinge on those edge players making blocks. The right and left tackle, Trent Williams, Colt McKivitz, and those tight ends, Luke Farrell and Jake Tunges. And with the question marks about Kyle Juszczyk, it could be even more important for them to make those blocks. That's what's really going to open up the running game in both those toss plays, which I've been calling for, and they were effective last week, but also when it comes to the zone running game. And last week, New Orleans was very much too aggressive, and the 49ers started using that against them in the second half. So this is one of those things I think is very important for the 49ers to win if they're going to run the football. And I'm not saying don't run the ball up the middle. I'm saying the weakness of the defense is right off tackle. If you're talking where, I'm going to tell you it's right off the right and left hip of the right and left tackle. That's exactly where you need to go. That's why The zone scheme is really important for the 49ers. It should be effective. The toss play will give the 49ers the necessary depth and allow that running back to get vertical before he gets to the line of scrimmage. I think both those plays could be pivotal. I also believe that there's opportunities for an extended run game this week for the 49ers to run a little bit of, some swings and some screens and some things like that to get outside, out on the edges. Once you get out past those edge defenders, there's really a lot of space. Those linebackers are inside, and so it gives you an opportunity. So I think that those are going to be keys in this football game is being able to get that run game established and really get it going. I'm excited about it. Now, the next one that I want to talk about is more of a complete Kyle Shanahan look, and that's at personnel groupings versus Gannon's designations. So as you go through the game, usually Kyle Shanahan starts out with 21 personnel. He gets Kyle Juszczyk on the field, and he wants to see how defenses respond. What kind of grouping are they going to put out there? Is it going to be their nickel package? And then we have an advantage, right, as 49ers to run the ball. The Niners can run the ball against, that type of look. Nickel package advantage, 49ers and 21 personnel. If they come out in their base set, 3-4, which I believe Jonathan Gannon will, then you don't have the advantage that way. Maybe you have an advantage in the passing game. You could still run, but I'm saying is it doesn't give you a distinct advantage where you can see it openly. You get the Seattle Seahawks. They didn't go to their base 3-4. They brought a third safety in. So would, Jonathan Gannon and the Cardinals do that? This is the part of the game where you're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Now, there's a chance 49ers have to come out in 12 personnel because Kyle Juszczyk's not available. If that is the case, then how will Jonathan Gannon play it? My guess is in that case, he's going to feel confident to not have to put a third linebacker on the field. To go to his base 3-4, he can go with the third safety if he feels comfortable with it. I think he'll feel comfortable with both. But finding the personnel grouping is going to be important. Just like with 11 personnel. I talked about the wide receivers versus the cornerbacks. If you go 11 personnel and they stay 3 safeties, you want to throw the football and you want to be able to, find a way to get those wide receivers open because you're going to find some matchups that you really like. Number one. Number two, if you go to 11 personnel and they bring on a third corner, you not only have an advantage in the run game, but you have an advantage in the passing game. You have an advantage in the run game because you've got to feel like they're bringing in a young player, right? If they didn't bring in a third safety, they brought in, a young guy that you can run at. I talked about Will Johnson, not exactly the best if he's playing when it comes to run support. Cutback Clark as well. That's another guy that's a little bit smaller. When you're talking about the guys who are going to be blocking, Kendrick Bourne and Jawan Jennings, those guys could take advantage of those said matchups, and you kind of feel good about that. So I think that personnel groupings for the 49ers and the designations that Jonathan Gannon puts on them are going to be interesting in the 49ers opening 20-play script. How Kyle Shanahan kind of goes through will kind of determine how he plans on attacking. The other thing he's going to be looking for is Jonathan Gannon and this Cardinals defense going to be willing to drop those linebackers back the way that the two teams have before and take away those deep crossers and those deep in cuts and allow the 49ers to check it down underneath and allow the 49ers an opportunity to run the football. I think that that's going to be one of the keys in this game because if they're going to be squeezing those plays, 49ers have to work outside, 49ers have to do some other things, be willing to take the check down and pick up 5-6 yards and wait for them to start jumping up, and then you can start taking advantage of some of those deep, more vertical passes. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game. Now, as an offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan wants to be able to dictate what the defense is going to do, and sometimes you have to figure out what they're going to do early. Now, sometimes you just have a feel for what they do as a defense, and they don't change, and you can kind of stay on that. I think Jonathan Gannon's a good enough defensive coordinator that he does adjust, and he does change. So I think the 49ers are going to have to continue to adjust and continue to change, and this is going to be a real chess match. But I believe that Kyle Shanahan's got an idea of what he's going to see early, and then he's just going to have to play off that. But in this matchup, Christian McCaffrey versus Mac Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither, that's going to be the number one matchup in this game, the X Factor matchup. The 49ers wide receivers versus Cardinals corners, especially if they continue to not have Will Johnson, their young guy, out on the outside, and they have to go with Cutback Clark and with Denzel Burke. It could get a little bit more interesting for the Cardinals in the secondary. 49ers offensive line, versus pressure packages on third down, especially. Don't have third and long. Stay ahead of the sticks. That way, those guys can get after you, because it's going to be difficult for the 49ers to hold up against those pressure packages if it's third and long. And if you do have a third and long, you need to keep somebody in, a running back and a tight end, probably both, to make sure you get a 7-man protection and give your quarterback time to get rid of the football. 49ers edge blocking, tight ends, those tackles, your fullback if it's Juszczyk, or if it's Jake Tunges, they have to be able to be effective blocking those edge defenders and creating lanes for you in both the outside zone and when it comes to running the outside toss play. Those are going to be very effective. And then how Kyle Shanahan is able to run his personnel groupings and what Gannon designates. Is it going to be a third safety? Is it going to be your nickel package by certain sets? Are you going to go with your base, 3-4? All of that being determined by what Kyle Shanahan does will kind of give him the idea of how he lines up his best matchups. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think this one's going to be a chess match, two teams that know each other pretty well. And, of course, I still want to talk about all the defensive key matchups, Kyler Murray and all that. That's going to be coming up later this week. But I appreciate you all for coming through. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by FanDuel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.